After nearly a decade of waiting, Granblue Fantasy Relink's February 1st release date is nearly upon us. Thankfully, Cygames decided to bless us with a free demo, available now on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. It includes a brief tutorial, one fairly meaty story quest, and 3 quest mode quests where you can choose between 11 different playable characters to play as. And in this video, I'm going to be walking you through everything the demo has to offer and giving you my full impressions. And spoiler alert, it's freaking good. And big thanks to Cygames for sponsoring this video. To try out the demo for yourself on PS4 and PS5, or to pre-order the game, which gives you a few days early access by the way, be sure to click the link in the pinned comment or the description below. When you first boot up the demo, it gives you 3 options: tutorial, story, or quest mode. The tutorial is quite short, but I highly recommend trying it. There's some nuances to the game that you might not be familiar with, and the tutorial does a great job of teaching you the basics of combat. Right after, I jumped into the story mode, and almost immediately it took my breath away. The game is absolutely stunning on PlayStation 5. Right away, you're tasked with rescuing some nearby villagers being held hostage by goblins. In the first area, you're greeted with this gorgeous grassy field atop a floating archipelago. It's simply stunning. I've had a Granblue Fantasy image as my phone wallpaper for as long as I can remember. I look at it all the time wondering what it would be like to explore this world in full 3D, and to finally be able to do that felt absolutely magical. It was everything I was hoping for and more. Exploration is fairly light, but there's just enough to give you that hit of dopamine you want from exploring a beautiful world in an RPG. You have boxes to break, shiny blue items to collect that will be used for crafting gear or upgrading gear later in the game, and you also have shrouded treasures. To unlock these, you'll need to complete a speed challenge. They're fairly easy at first. Essentially, there's crystals that are kind of in a line and you need to collect them all before a timer runs out. The 2 that were available in the demo, like I said, were fairly easy, but I imagine these will get much more challenging as the game goes on. Something I also liked is that you can jump really high, so it's really easy to jump up buildings and explore around the environment, and you don't have fall damage, unless of course you fall off the island. And simply moving around the world just feels really good. Now let's move on to the star of the show, the combat. It's incredible. Now to start, you have your basic light and heavy attacks. You can block, you can dodge. And what I love about the dodge is this thing absolutely launches you. I loved it. You also have a link attack that once you do enough will build up a particular meter, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Now if you hold down R1, it pulls up a suite of abilities that all have individual cooldowns. All these abilities do things like do big attacks, give characters buffs, heals, and much more. And you also have items that I didn't find myself using that often, but I imagine, like I said, that once the harder levels come along, you'll want to be using these more often. Overall, combat just has this really fun, arcadey feel to it. Enemies actually feel fun to fight, and they're fairly diverse. You have normal soldiers, you have big heavy ones with shields, you have casters, archers. There's a really great variety. And what I like is that you can't just mindlessly spam attacks. This isn't like a Warriors or Musou game. You actually need to be thoughtful. There were plenty of times where I found myself getting pelted by casters and archers, so I had to take them out first, make sure the big shielded guys didn't do too much damage, so I got behind them to do damage. So there was a lot of strategy that went into it. Now that said, there is an assist mode, and there's 2 versions of it. There's normal assist mode where you can just mash square and it'll do cool attacks for you. And then there's full assist mode where you literally only have to move your character around and the game will take care of the rest. Now I played with both of them off. I just wanted full control of my character, and that's how I'm going to play the full game, but it's cool to know that this is available for players new to action RPGs. And last but not least, we have Skybound arts. Next to your health bar, you have a meter that slowly builds up, and once it fills, you can unleash a big, devastating attack. And what's cool is other characters also have this meter, so if you unleash them all at the same time, you can do big damage for a full chain. Oh yeah, you heard that right. We've got party members. You have 3 others that you can have in your party for a total of 4. Now in the story mode, I couldn't swap to any of the characters in the middle of combat. I can only control Gran. However, the AI is very competent. I never felt like I had to babysit them. It felt like they were always doing exactly what made sense. Even if I got into a critical state, they would come rescue me, and vice versa. I could go rescue them. So I didn't have a problem with them at all. And combat is just fun to watch. All the moves are super flashy and feel amazing to pull off. Shockingly, this runs at a very smooth 60 frames per second on PlayStation 5. I never had any performance issues. As for the rest of the story quest, it's fairly linear, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, there's just enough things to find off the beaten path to scratch that exploration itch. And in fact, even though the level is pretty linear, it's quite large and really beautiful. Now after a certain point, it'll transition into this sort of goblin village arena. And what's what's cool is this is the same one that's in that super early footage of the game, so it's really cool to see that that made it into the final version of the game. Now here you'll encounter a big goblin boss with a huge shield, super fun fight. And what's cool is you have to actually implement some strategy. You can't just wail on their big shield, you have to get behind it. And they also have this sort of rage mode that does different moves. And there's also a break meter on enemies that once broken, they're crippled and they can't move. And there's also a 100% link mode also after doing a bunch of link attacks. And once you activate this, it'll slow down enemies, you can do more damage. To say the least, there's lots of cool ways to interact with combat and inflict big damage. I was really bummed when the story mission ended because I just wanted to keep playing. I wanted to keep learning about these characters, learn about what's going on in the story, and I think that's a sign of a good demo. Now, the development team has said that the main story is going to be about 20 hours long with 20 to 40 hours of additional story content after completing certain quests in the quest mode. So that sounds pretty meaty to me. And speaking of the quest mode, let's touch on that. As I mentioned, there's 3 quests with 11 playable characters. The developers said that the game will have over 100 quests at launch, pushing the game's length well past 100 hours depending on how much time you want to put into this. And they've already promised a new raid and 2 new playable characters in the months coming after launch. Super exciting. Now, the first quest had waves of goblins coming to attack you in a forest. It was fairly basic. In this quest, I played as Zeta. She's a spear user, very acrobatic, constantly launches herself into the air and then launches herself at enemies. And she also has this dedicated R1 ability for parrying for huge damage. She was a pretty fun character. The quest itself was fairly short, nothing too special, but it was cool to get a different little vibe from this. And Zeta wasn't exactly what I was looking for, so I tried someone else in the next one. And so the second quest is you fighting a boss called a Quakedile. This one I played as Lancelot. Now for this quest, it was a very dedicated boss fight. It was just all about taking down this big boss. Now while I played Lancelot in this particular fight, I tried every single character the demo had available, and I gotta say, hands down, Lancelot is my favorite. He's just so much fun. And what I found surprising is apparently no one else likes him, so hey, when we play co-op together, I got dibs on Lancelot. What I loved about him is he's super fast with those dual daggers and his ice element. He can close long distances with one of his R1 moves, he can attack from range, he can do a big AoE slam, he can even freeze enemies. I mean, what's not to love about this guy? And his triangle attack ability is also really unique. He can basically just keep spamming attacks while using the left stick to move around enemies. It was really cool. And I also felt like his ability cooldowns refreshed way faster than everyone else's. Maybe it was the different things I had equipped on him. I'm not sure if that's just his playstyle, but either way, I loved it. I even used him on the rock golem and he was just as fun. Like I said, he's definitely going to be my main character once the full game comes out. While Lancelot is definitely my favorite, I did enjoy Io, Rackham, and Charlotta. They were all pretty fun. Once the full game comes out, I'll probably mix them in between Lancelot, but obviously he's going to be my favorite. What impressed me most about the demo though was the amount of characters and how they all played. They're all so wildly different. They have very different move sets, very different ways you have to play them. It's not just a very simple, like the character model changes and we give them a different weapon, but they're similar. No, they're all very different. And what's crazy is there's going to be 20 playable characters at launch. I genuinely don't know how the development team managed to pull that off. It's very impressive. Now in total, I played the demo for about 3 hours and I genuinely loved every second of it. Even running around the hub town got me really excited. I can't wait to meet everyone and see what other adventures are in store. And if you guys have been following me for any period of time, you know I've been hyping this game up for years, going as far back as 2018. I've even had Relink as my Twitter banner image for years. I knew this game was going to be good, but this demo absolutely blew me away, and I want this game now. Once again, you can try the demo for yourself on PS4 and PS5 for free, and if you pre-order the game digitally, you can get the game a few days early. I'll leave links down below so you can check them out for yourself. And to check out another great video about some awesome JRPGs, make sure you click this video right here. And special thanks to Reset Switch, Tyler Kuzawa, and the Miyazaki Man for supporting me over on Patreon. To get exclusive videos and other cool perks, consider supporting me over on patreon.com/thegaming shelf. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.